All right, everybody. We'll go ahead and get rolling now. We get started because we're only going to go for about, like an hour and 15 minutes or so. And then everyone's going to end up going over to the Berry Rock thing and have lunch over there. So I received this email last night at about, I don't even know what time, 8 o'clock at night. The rollout of all the new forms has been postponed to July 23rd.
How did they pick that date out of their ass? Excuse me, but
you tell me. I don't know.
Another temporary date. Everyone knows it.
Yeah. No, I don't really think it has anything to do with the stay. Actually, I think it's just they just pushed it back. What would that be, about 3 weeks? Because quite honestly, and you know what this is? Actually, if you read it, because I told Renee about it last night. I said, hey, it got pushed back. She's like, why? I'm like, well, the reason it got pushed back was because I'm sure they did all the forms, rolled it out, and now they're getting phone calls and emails from everyone going, hey, what about this? What about that? And they're like, oh, okay, we didn't think about that, So that's why it got pushed off. I mean, between you and me, it wouldn't surprise me if it gets pushed off even another week or two. Because we're all trying to figure this out. Honestly, that's the theme of today's meeting. It was kind of inspired by Jen. When she came.
Like I do.
No, she came to me like, oh, it was a few days ago, and went, hey, can we go over these forms again? I'm like, okay. So we sat like in conference room, and while we're going over them, I'm like, man, it's one thing to have the form, and this is what goes here and what goes there. Now we're getting into the nuances of how we're going to create these deals, make them, and keep them together. And a lot of questions popped up when I was just sitting there talking with Jen. I'm like, when I'm thinking, what about this? What about that? How is this going to play out? So I decided, hey, let's just make this, since we got kind of a short meeting anyway, let's make this an open forum. And because I want to hear everyone's thoughts on how we're gonna transpire, and I'll kind of get this whole thing started, and then we'll kind of see how it goes. I took a few notes, and there's some stuff I want to go over with you. Let me show the first one. This is one of the issues. Okay. That.
Or do you want me to pass those out?
Yeah, here, would you? I was actually at the gym talking to Joe Sarman. Does anybody know Joe Sarman? He's kind of a forms geek or whatever. So while we're there, we're just talking about, hey, how's this rollout going to happen? What's going to really go down? And he's like, Mark, he goes, one of the things I've already seen is how many agents are going to screw up the front page. And I'm like, yeah, I see that. He goes, no. He goes, so yeah, I'll kind of pass this out, because this is one of the things which is really going to pop up. And whether you're on the buyer side, I don't want anyone to make this mistake. And if you're on the listing side, I want you to be aware that this mistake can be made. Again, this is one of those, didn't think about that. This extra line that got added in here, blank percent of the purchase price shall be paid by the seller at closing towards buyer broker's compensation. Now here, this is in addition to any amount agreed upon in a separate cooperative compensation disclosure. Everyone has that copy? Okay. Well, everyone knows what that, here, as you pass it out, what that cooperative compensation agreement is. So when I was talking to him, I'm like, okay, I can definitely see what you're talking about. I can see this going down. Agent's going to draw up their offer. They're going to send over this rider, this commission rider. They're going to throw in their, let's just say they're 2.5%, and they're going to throw it on that rider. And the agent who doesn't really know, because we haven't had the experience with it yet, is also going to write their 2.5% in here. Now, like when Joe was talking to me, he's like, Mark, the way the form reads and the way I kind of agree with them is this number here on this line is in addition to any agreed upon amount on that rider. I'm like, okay, I see where you're going with this. So if you're the buyer's agent, or if I'm actually more concerned about being on the listing side right now. if you're the listing agent and this offer comes over and it has that rider attached to it that says 2.5%, and they write 2.5% here, is that 2.5% or is that 5%?
But it wouldn't be this writer, right? Because this is Form 2107.
That's not-
That is the incorrect form.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Oh, okay.
Just wanna make sure.
All right, it is. Actually,
Do you want me to go print it?
now you know what?
No,
Don't print it. I will find it right here.
Sorry.
2107.
Okay.
Wilbur Day.
Is 2107 the one that's the,
I thought that was the writer when I was printing, sorry.
that's just, I was making sure, yes.
And of course, it's not coming up right now.
I'll take a call.
All right. So we're going to go on the fly here. Everyone's kind of familiar with the form we're talking about. It looks like the commission agreement, but it's signed by both sides. Okay, that's what the form is. So when we're talking, I'm like, okay, this is where we're going to start getting into the weeds a little bit on when everything starts to change. If you have a listing and this comes across at 2.5%, and they've also included that rider on there at 2.5%, an argument could be made that the seller's paying 5%.
To the buyer's agent.
Yeah, the buyer's agent. So it puts us in kind of a little, I don't want to say a trick box, but if you're the listing agent, you have to think to yourself, is this an oops, honest mistake, or is this just flat out wrong? And how do we as agents address that? I mean, I personally would not feel comfortable having my seller sign this going, someone can make a damn good argument that they're paying the buyer's agent 5% now. Now, as I was reading this, I'm like, okay, I don't even understand why, if there's a commission agreement here, what, like these two things, I don't understand why there's two things here. To me, this seems confusing as hell. I know, it should. But now, unfortunately, this is the world we live in right now. So we got to figure out what's going on here. And these are the little nuances that I'm like, is this going to be a problem or not?
Let's see what I put in the special agreement. This is the commission amount.
Mm-hmm.
The total commission amount will be.
Exactly.
Why can't you do that? Just put
You can.
instead of the forms.
Yeah, you
Send
can.
them that form.
Just clarify in your email, like, hey, like, we're all in a gray area right now, we're asking the seller to pay 2.7% to us, the buy side. Like, that's just an email, we can do that in email, correct?
Yes.
As long as the contract's
So, like,
right, yeah.
Obviously, like, do the contracts as best you
Just
can,
so
but
like lawyer.
for 6 months, put in your email, hey, seller's paying 2.7%.
Correct. It's just,
Still in writing.
Yeah.
Would you clarify?
if let's put it this way, seller's offering 2.7% and you're agreed to take the 2.7%, you put zeros all in there, NA, whatever, and everything's fine as long as you have that rider.
And then what would you put on the first one? 2.7?
No, you wouldn't do anything here.
Nothing.
You would just use the other rider, which of course we don't have.
Right, okay.
Yeah, put C rider in that blank.
Oh, that's
Okay.
not bad.
Alright.
Do you have to use the rider? I'm sorry, I wasn't here at that one. I mean, could you just put the 2.7 and not include the rider?
Let me see if I can refresh this.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, which would be
Maybe like
I'm
do one or
fine,
the other,
but you know what I mean? If you-
Right.
with
Well,
all- yeah.
that line 34 is actually for buyer's closing costs, right? 36 is actually for the compensation.
Right.
Right.
Well, yeah, well, that's right. I think
That's
you
what
should put your compensation in there and not do the rider.
On 36.
Yeah.
I don't see why not.
Wouldn't it just be easier for
Says
everybody?
in addition to that though.
Just not have another rider on it?
Oh, yeah, it
Yeah.
does say in addition to the rider. You're
So this is
right.
really,
In
this is,
addition to, so then.
No, it says this is in addition to any amount already agreed upon.
Right.
So you could
In the
put it there, you don't
separate
have to do
rider.
the rider.
So it seems like it's either or. But if you didn't have that rider, then it's going to be called back to this.
by the way, this is a great time for our internet to start acting up.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even see Form 2108 in St. Charles Forms.
It's not.
Is it
It's
gone
not
right
yet.
now?
Yeah. Actually, I don't believe.
They haven't updated
Well,
anything.
Yeah, and I guess that's in my opinion that's kind of by design because they don't want to be honest, they don't want agents looking at the new forms. until all the, but
Well,
And
I
it-
thought I was gonna have an appointment on Monday,
Mhm.
it went into effect, and I was like, crap.
Yeah.
How am I gonna get this
Well,
all done?
and that's, again,
Addressing.
going back to this is the world we live in. All the agents out there that we're dealing with, how many of them have not even seen these forms? And all of a sudden, one day they're going to log into Forms for us, and bloop, it's all new. About 85%.
Well, it said in that email that they were worried about the number of people who won't know.
Yeah, I know.
How are they gonna know in 2 more weeks?
I know.
They're gonna know.
So, yeah.
45 days.
They're never gonna know.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, because I'll be honest, right now, it is ripe for the picking of someone who is a real slick agent who can really get something by you. It's ripe for the picking right now because they just wouldn't know. So what would happen in that case? And you know, unfortunately, on the listing side, what I see is, you know, you get 8, 10, 12 offers in, you got to go through and make sure these offers are all written correctly. Because if they're not, I don't know. I mean, I would not be the one explaining to my seller why they just had to pay 5, 6, like a 9% commission. You know, just because, and you know why? It's because our paperwork got past them. That's why.
So if you got a contract, if you're a listing agent, you got a contract came across, they got a box check and they're 2.7%
Mhm.
written in there, and they have a commission agreement rider
Right.
along with it. Would be best just to, in a counter, like even if you didn't have anything else to counter,
Yeah,
counter back with uncheck the box
correct.
for the rider. So now that you only have the one thing,
Yeah, because it's going to have to be
and explain to them why you
one or the other. Either leave in the rider and take that box off, which, man, I wish our internet was working right now. But you know, take off that one box. And I don't even.
Whenever, you know, you're like up against a deadline, you're like, we have to get this in.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
which
That's
is-
when things are-
yeah, which is line. And you know what? That's the biggest advice I can give right now is slow down.
But I've been seeing in like the agent remarks that they want 48 hours now to review offers. That's becoming more common, so they're not so rushed with reviewing those offers.
Mm-hmm.
Be beneficial.
And
My internet's working, just hit stop and refresh.
all right.
Stop and refresh, like when you're refreshing,
Stop and refresh.
I was
Bad
talking
idea.
to both brains right there. Yes,
Stop and refresh, stop and refresh.
I had to restart my computer the other day. And it updated, it only took a minute.
Give me 1 second. All right. So while we're doing this, we'll go on. So the front page issue I see popping up. I put down here in my notes, correcting errors. What I envision is a lot of, I shouldn't really even say errors. We're going to go forward in a time when a lot of people don't really understand what they're doing. And even the ones that do might think they really understand it, but we have a difference of opinion. Right now, there's going to be a lot of opinions floating around. And you're going to be dealing with a lot of people who they have taken a class, or they watched something online, or something popped up, and your opinion of how this thing should be written, how the deal should go down, is different than theirs. I envision a lot of phone calls between agents. Just a lot of, hey, got a question. I see you wrote this up. What were you thinking on this? How is it going down? Because this is what I see on my side. I think I've used the expression in the past, cooler heads will prevail. And I believe that is definitely truth going forward. I mean, you're going to have to really take a second. I envision a multitude of phone calls between myself and other brokers.
Every
here.
Well, now that you brought that up, all right, give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. So let me see if I can find that form so we can better discuss it here. Here, this is the cooperative compensation disclosure.
All right.
So again, I think this is what's going to confuse a lot of people, because I would envision this rider attaching to almost every contract that gets sent. But at the same time, you've got to keep an eye out for that, what's on that front page. And it's kind of sort of like, remember when they started putting buyer's closing costs actually in the contract? How many times did you hear of or think, or maybe even was you got caught because there were closing costs in there and you just didn't catch it? I see the same thing happening. So,
Form we talked about, have our sellers sign it.
yes.
So probably the, we would have both,
Mm-hmm.
is if sellers already have this signed and ready to go. Basically, because they've agreed that they're gonna pay, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
and you want a little more than that. You're gonna
Right.
write that difference in.
Correct. Like if they're offering 2.5 and your buyer agency contract was 2.7, on that front page, that's where you'd write the 0.2%.
Asking the seller to pay that difference?
Yes.
That's a question.
Yes.
Could you kind of be slick and put it in the closing cost, the top line, instead of compensation? So they don't be like, I'm not paying them, but they think they need the money for something else.
Why couldn't you?
That's
Because that's what we normally do.
I think it's separated.
Honestly-
All the new lenders have made their new rules now about how the commissions paid by sellers don't fall into like
But
the
it's-
3% max rule.
honestly, that's
But
contract
it
2.0.
Doesn't,
Like the difference
That's next
falling
level.
into their closing costs?
And, I mean, don't appraiser, do appraisers see the contract?
Yes.
Yes.
So that could have an effect too on appraisal if they know it's going towards buyer's agency as opposed to
I mean,
concessions, which could be added to.
But it's included now.
here's the deal. Would I try doing that? Probably. Do I think?
You just tell your buyer, you could just say, well, they're only giving 2.5, you agreed to 2.7, so we're just gonna ask for $500 closing costs.
Mhm. Yeah.
See if they take it.
If push comes to shove and buyers don't have any extra money, could you just amend the buyer's
Yeah.
Oh, you can.
Well, and that's
Well, hold on.
here.
Yeah.
Okay, no, good. Because
So basically what you said, so yeah, we're using the same example, it's 2.5 versus 2.7. If you've already agreed with your buyer, they're gonna pay 2.7. You're gonna get 500, whatever, if that difference was $500, put it in this first line 7, the contract.
Yeah.
The closing cost one, the buyer gets a credit for closing costs, and then their commission paid to you, the extra commission is another line item down on their closing fee. So
Correct.
It evens out for them, the seller doesn't know any different.
Maybe just
Correct.
don't make it like $572. Like, just don't make it exact.
We're gonna make it exact, because the seller side doesn't see the buyer's extra fees.
right,
Uh-huh.
they won't.
You're right, that does actually work.
Yeah, that's one of the things we're just like,
We're gonna work around it anyway.
yeah. Well, and
Or try.
back to Andrea's point, I have not seen any place written where it says you cannot amend your buyer agency agreement. I haven't seen a place where it says you can't draw up a new one. I haven't even seen any place where it says your buyer agency agreement can't state it's blank percent or additional funds of any kind. I haven't seen that. I've heard people say, "Go, no, it has to be a number, and you can't charge more than that." Well, if my agreement says I can charge that this is my fee, I'm not collect, because the spirit of that settlement was you can't collect money that your buyer didn't already agree to. Well, if they already agreed to 2.5% plus any overages offered by the seller, they've already agreed to that, haven't they?
So should we
we have a buyer's agency agreement amendment? Someone actually asked me for that yesterday, and I was like, huh?
Yeah, because I've used it.
So
Is there
Yeah,
one?
No, there's not one, and I'm like.
No, I had it.
I have it, you're right. I have
but
it.
that's
I just don't trust.
that kind of gets back to what I'm talking about. If we're in this gray area for the next 6 months to a year, because can we? If you would call the National Association, or you call the local, or you call Maris and ask them that question, they tell you no, you can't do it. But I don't know that you can't.
Well, I know when I was on my call, someone said, could we just write a minimum of,
Yes,
and she was like, or you can't, you know?
because you, in the spirit of the settlement, you and your buyer have agreed upon an amount. You're not being underhanded and taking any money away from them. So I don't know.
If we do make an amendment to the thing, and I just do, and it doesn't have to be a legal form, I can just do it on a piece of paper to do ours, right?
Correct. Yeah.
'Cause there's-
No, I mean, I would, quite honestly, right now, in the situation we're in right now, if it's more, I'd have them sign a new one. I'd just tear up the old one, throw it away.
Do you know how many of you guys though turn in buyer's agency agreements that say they're paying out 2.7 or 3, and it's lower and no changes ever are made?
Mm-hmm.
Really ever.
Well, you can always accept less because,
Nobody cares.
yeah, because the buyer's not going to come back, and buyer's not going to call me on the phone and complain that they got undercharged. So, I mean, you can always charge less. But, yeah,
This is kind of off the cuff, but.
No, that's what we're here for.
Okay, so a closing that I had this week, on the contract, it was an investor contract, and they wrote that they were doing 80% LTV.
Mhm.
But when I got the closing statements, they did 100% financing.
Okay.
Should they have done an amendment?
That's a good question. No, I don't think so.
Sometimes the lender will
No.
request an amendment, but.
We used to
I
have,
called the agent, he was like, really? And I was like, yeah, and I pulled it right up while I was on the phone with him, and I said, it says that your loan amount is 80%. I said, I just wanna make sure
yeah,
my broker's not gonna be wanting another document,
and that's,
and that I didn't catch this.
no.
Well, I couldn't have caught it because the contract was 80%, and I didn't get the closing, seller had already closed, then we got the buyer's side from the title company that I sent to Renee. And that's when I saw
I get you. It does. Now, and the only reason I say I'm a little hesitant, because personally, I don't care. That's fine. But I'm hesitant is I go back to our foreclosure days, and the banks, for whatever reason, would make a hissy fit out of that. Like, because for instance, what we used to have is people who would put not contingent upon financing, all cash contract. They'd show up at closing, and all of a sudden, now there was a loan. The banks would put the brakes on that at closing.
They still do.
We're not doing it.
Well, I had another one this week too, my big listing on Douglas,
Mhm.
that, the multiple offers with the escalation clause I called you about, and when, the whole financing paragraph was blank,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a VA approval. Talked to the VA loan officer, she said, they're good to go, they're perfect, no problems whatsoever. And so then at closing, it's 100% financing with a VA loan. But the only way that was disclosed in the beginning was through the pre-approval.
Right.
Because the paragraph was completely blank on the contract.
Right. Now, in my opinion, the only time that becomes an issue is if they can't close. Because I look at it from a practical standpoint. I mean, if we're all on track to close, let's all just shut up and close and move on. But we used to have, Sherry, we'll tell you, we used to have the problems with the banks because all of a sudden, 2 days before, the bank would find out that there's a lender involved, and they put the brakes on the whole thing. And I'm like, guys, I've already talked to the lender. The money is there. All we gotta do is sign papers tomorrow. They're like, no, we can't do it. They had to do amendments. Sometimes they would cancel the whole contract. We'd have to re-enter the whole thing in, go through the whole approval process on their end. I could never figure out why, but they did.
When they're getting foreclosed on, don't they want another lender buying a foreclosed property? Don't they get paid by like insurance for the foreclosure?
I don't know.
So that insurance company doesn't
The
want.
mortgage insurance is probably
Yeah.
already been settled
Yeah.
up on the
I was
foreclosure.
wondering if that was the issue, like, oh, there's more
The only-
mortgage
I
insurance.
mean, like, I know the
to pay.
foreclosures do it, but I've had, like, bigger rates, like Rocket Mortgage,
Yeah.
don't want to amend the financing, but it's usually goes through your bank.
Well,
Okay.
I've only had it where it's changed from products, like to FHA.
Right.
You know, the more I'm thinking about this and I'm reading this, I don't know why that line is even on the front page of the contract. Because you could put the additional bonus of 0.2% you offer by selling broker. Okay. You know what? Okay.
The listing agent doesn't get this sign.
I understand. On the front page of the contract, it says the seller's paying it. Right here, it says the other brokerage is paying it. That's the difference. Okay.
Say that again?
Yes.
This is an additional bonus of blank is offered by the selling broker. So this is coming from the other brokerage, this money. The money on the front of the contract is coming from the seller. That's the difference.
By stating that doesn't need to be in both places.
Wait, doesn't the other brokerage get it from the seller?
Not necessarily.
Not the seller.
See?
Right?
See, percent of purchase price shall be paid by seller at closing cost. That's the difference.
And then say the other one again?
The other one, this said broker right here.
So that's for the buyer.
Right, so on the front page, this money is coming from the seller. On that amendment that we don't have, or that rider,
Their compensation.
it's coming from the brokerage. That's the difference.
Hey Mark, so you think, I'm sure title companies haven't even gotten into this, because we don't even know what the hell's going on. But since it's on the contract about the compensation, do you think that instead of just an email like, hey, where you put your commission and any additional pieces, they're gonna want the buyer's agency and this, if there's a difference between the two?
I don't think they're going to want our buyer agency agreement, because I think they're going to take just whatever we say, because the way they're going to look at it, almost like now they sometimes just email you or call you and go, hey, what's your side, and did you have like a transaction fee, and they just throw it on there. I don't think title companies really care.
But since it's on the contract now.
Yeah, it might.
You said that there's a difference,
Well-
like if the buyer and seller are both paying, or the buyer paying all of it.
Yeah.
Freedom will ask for it.
And
Freedom will ask for the buyer's agency. If like the other agent says the commission is 2.7 and you're saying it's 3, they're gonna want yours to bring back to the Freedom
Yeah,
does. I don't
yeah.
know about
But if
the
it's
other.
all on a contract now, so that makes sense why you're gonna hold
Yeah.
that, right?
yeah, it does. It's although it makes sense to me, I still am in the pool of who's going to really know that, because we just figured that out.
I don't understand that.
You still
I
understand?
don't understand that broker, you said it's coming from the broker, but it's broker getting it from the seller.
No,
Right, I know.
no.
That's what I was thinking,
But it's on the
just
listing
leave it
agreement.
So that's the way I
Broker pays
understand it.
broker.
No, see,
On the listing
Yeah.
agreement.
right,
That amount.
right.
So that's why it has to come from the broker. Because you can't charge the seller again for what they're already paying. to
I
the
see, I
other
see, I
broker.
see, I see.
Yes. You get it now? Yeah, because once that light goes on, you're like, oh, okay, I understand now. Because we're still thinking the old way. This is the new way. They're only paying their side, and they're paying the other side. They're not paying the total of the brokerage unless it's part of this agreement, which, well, it is.
So we do have to put the same amount, like it has to match.
You'd put 0.2% in here, and if you want your 2.7. You would on that you would have your okay, for instance, this is the way I envision this. Your people fall in love with the house. You're getting ready to write an offer. You call the other agent. We'll get into this later. Call the other agent. What's the payout? Like it's 2.5%. You put your 2.5 on that. Now, if yours, yes, on that.
And then you check the.
Now, if they say if they tell you it's a 2.5% payout, you put 2.5 on there. You're done. Yes. Then, yes.
Okay.
And then attach that rider like you would any other rider. Then you come over here and put 0.2% of purchase price, or you can figure it out whatever the extra dollar amount is. What 0.02?
What's the big difference?
20%, 2%, whatever.
We knew.
Well, that's where like the math's gonna get confusing because some people don't know what 0.2%, 0.2% means. Because if you put, usually we say 2.7%, you put 2.7 percentage sign. If
Yeah.
you put 0.2%, completely different thing.
Yeah.
So
We're gonna have math class now.
On here though, this is saying that it's paid by the seller. What if it's paid by the buyer?
Then it wouldn't even show up here.
Then you just don't.
Right,
You just do like
right.
you do now.
Yes.
That's why I think title companies are doing what
Well,
Yeah.
and just so you know, Andrea, when I was at the gym with Joe Sarmer, he's like, and Mark, he goes, to my knowledge, no one on our associations brought any title companies in to discuss any of these changes with them.
So they might not want anything.
So they might not have a clue what's going on. I mean, I'm sure they heard there's all changes, but they might be sitting there going, well, we'll wait till the first contracts come through and see.
Well, I talked to one of the lead processors at Steeple Bank today, and she's like, you've had no training whatsoever. I was like, are you serious? And
But
she's
how
like,
could they? We don't even
she's
know.
like,
No.
I don't know anything. I know nothing.
I know.
We need to, how are we gonna be able to see the seller, if we have the buyer, how are we gonna see the seller side? You're gonna have to ask for that ahead of time, make sure it's correct.
Well,
You don't wanna find out the closing table. What? The commission.
no, because it wouldn't really matter to us on the buyer's side, I don't think.
So what if the title screws us up?
Yeah.
Well, you would just, honestly,
Well, you know when you see the statement. You don't see the statement until the closing table or after.
Oh, no, we get it because
The listing?
Not the
You
seller
get
side.
the seller side.
Well, if you're lucky, you get the seller side.
I still know if I'm a buyer's agent,
That company always sends me a seller's
why would I
side,
care?
So I can make sure that the price is right on,
Really?
oh, yeah, just freedom. If they're paying, just get back in.
No, but
Oh,
the
sure.
way, I'm just
If
saying.
I don't have it like 3 days before, I start bitching about it.
Yeah.
But
I just-
like, having the buyer side.
I'm just trying to think, if I was,
My closer will work it up on a Sunday.
why would I care?
In case you're getting paid from different sources, either the buyer, the seller, or the broker.
Hey guys,
But there
Was
is
it-
a writer that have that, so, I mean, they'll have that.
But not if they don't understand it.
Well,
You
so
go
as
as
a
a
buyer,
buyer.
they would have to sign that.
Oh, yeah, well.
You're talking about the lenders.
No, I'm talking about
back
the
in
title
6 months.
company, just making sure all the shit's okay.
Well, here's
Yeah.
here's the thing. It's going to be incumbent upon us for at least the first couple months to actually review your closing statement ahead of time.
But you don't get it ahead of time.
You can ask
We
for
always get our
details.
side.
You can get it, you can ask for the
Yeah, usually
details.
when
Yeah.
Or just say, hey, is the commission on the seller side X, Y, or $1, 2, 3
Yeah.
dollars?
But I think you guys need to reach out just to make sure.
So usually the holdup with your statement is they haven't balanced with the other title company.
Right.
And once they get those fees from the other title company and they get your seller's payoff, those are the two things that are keeping your statement in limbo. Once they have that,
Yeah.
then you can get that.
So as long as your
Oh, I see
title
what you're
company
saying.
knows.
As a buyer's agent,
I think you say
Right.
seller's title company as much as possible during high bid situations.
Well, that's the other thing that's gonna help if you use the same
That would
title company.
that would help. Honestly, that's something as an industry we should be doing more anyway. But that's for a whole different day talk.
But when we're in high bid situations, I always ask who are you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we should-
I just- Well, let's put it this way. I mean, just because we would never get the closing statement fast enough doesn't mean we're not going to now in the future. It just means you might have to call them 2 days beforehand and go, "Where is this at? I need it." Well, I haven't balanced yet. Then title company needs to get on the phone. I got to get this because it's just changing. I mean, I have to have this in advance. Just tell your title company or tell the other title company. Don't make me show up there and see this for the first time.
Well, you send them the contract, so it's gonna have that writer on there. So in order to balance, it would have to be on both sides.
Yes.
It would have to be on there.
Yes, it would. And I mean, it would just be one of those deals where maybe you send them an email whenever it is, a week in advance, 2 weeks in advance, of just detailing, this is a summary of the closing, price, concessions, boom, 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 boom. Just to try and get that hammered out.
I probably need to redo the transmittal
We might need to.
for the commission and explain it.
But I just think it's interesting that this is going to go into effect and none of the title companies really even know what's going on.
I'll be surprised if it doesn't.
I don't know. I mean,
Well, didn't they already postpone the August?
yes.
Yeah, so it's already been postponed once.
Why don't we run
The
through
rollout
like
of
2 or
it
3
from now on.
scenarios
So it's not
of, let's say we have the buyer, since
Yeah.
it's the more concerning side, say, hey, we're gonna call the listing agent. So you call me and say, hey, Nathan, what are you paying out on 123 Main Street? I'm paying out 2.7%. And then let's act like we're writing an offer for the buyer, knowing 2.7% is paid for.
Correct.
Next scenario could be, we're not paying anything. How do we deal with that?
Yes.
That's like actual examples. would
Okay.
be-
Yeah, because that was honestly
Ton of issues.
that was the purpose of this open forum. Is because in what I envision happening 85 to 90% of the time is exactly what we're doing now. The only additional step is you're going to have to contact the other agent and go, what's the payout on this? And they're going to come back and go 2.7%. Okay. In that case, you wouldn't even do anything here on the front. If there's already a payout in place, you would just merely attach this. As a buyer's agent, 2.7%, boom. Property here, have all parties sign off and you're done. That's what that's what I think is going to really happen in about 85% of the cases, maybe even 90. And it's going to go the same way. The only difference is instead of having 2.7 on the top of the MLS, you're going to have to contact them somehow and find out what it is. That's what I envision.
Do you think, like, I know we mentioned this before, do you think there's going to be some brokerages that, or whether it's us or not, say, hey, get this signed by your seller, but we can't upload this on somewhere else, can you? Like, the seller signs it first, said, we're paying 2.7, nothing's changed in our world, and then the buyer just signs it with their offer.
Correct. And
we don't know if we can upload this to the MLS yet.
Right. I think right now Maris would kick that back and say you can't put this on Maris. But there's nothing that says you can't have your sellers already sign it. And when you get someone says, "Hey, I'm dropping an offer," okay, I'm gonna email this right over to you. Boom, it's all done.
Is there anything that you can't put on additional comments on the seller's disclosure?
I think anything uploaded to the MLS.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you can't attach it, but could you write it in there?
You know, here, that's a damn good gray area.
That is a.
And additional comments?
Yeah, please email blah, blah, blah.
That is a damn good gray. And the reason why that's a gray area is the settlement. NAR or Maris might come back and go, no, you can't put anything about a commission in Maris. I'm like, well, I didn't put it there. The seller did, because I didn't touch the seller's disclosure. Yeah, I mean, I didn't touch the disclosure.
Don't call it commission, call it
Form
compensation.
2108.
A concession.
Just call it Form 2108.
Yeah.
Right.
Or information about.
Right, but here's my question though, then could they be accused, or could we be accused of coaching them on the
Yes, you could, because
disclosure?
no seller's gonna know what.
Yeah, that's true.
But still, so even if I coach, but here, and this is where we're in the gray.
Oh, you're right, make sure you
Yeah.
put lights.
Well, and this is where we're in the gray. Yeah, I coached them, but I didn't do it.
Yeah.
It's their handwriting on the paper.
Well, they're signing Form 2108 at the listing.
Yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
so they would know what Form 2108 is if they put it on the disclosure, they just sign it.
And that's where I think the first couple months, it's going to be, we're like our hair's on fire. And 6 months from now, you're going to start seeing shit like that popping up.
Yeah.
It's just a disclosure.
Listing notes, it'll just say 2108.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, so again, 85 to 90% of the cases, you're just going to fill us out with your 2.7%. You send it over. There's nothing else on here. Everyone signs off on it. It's either done ahead of time or if you're the buyer's agent, you just do with that. Check off the boxes. This is an additional rider. Everything's fine.
So is it still on the listing agreement, what we're paying out?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Does the broker have to sign that form?
Yes, I believe we do. Yeah. Now, just so everyone knows, and I got to put this out there, just because it says broker does not mean me. Everyone has authorization to sign contracts here.
It's not the mutual release, right?
Right, it's not mutual release. Because the reason I bring it up, I just don't want everybody sending me this shit all weekend long. So yeah, everyone here has a right to sign all the sales contracts.
And your name.
Yeah, your name.
Well, we get calls about that too.
Yeah, you might, and it's a good question, because you know why? That's a really good point, because someone in another company might say the broker has to sign off on this, and you send it over, and they're like, no, you're not supposed to sign that, Becky. Your broker's supposed to sign it, and then you got to go into the whole that is a business decision made by your brokerage, and we've decided to go, and that's actually part of our manual that nobody ever reads, that states that you have authorization to sign.
So Mark, when I was at that other company for days, they insisted, because I just signed something that was a broker.
Really? Well,
Were
hey,
you a designated agent?
They had designated agency.
Well, I think designated agent broker has to sign, right?
it could be. I don't know. To be honest, I don't even know. Honestly, there's a very large KW office that broker has to sign off on, like all of the listing papers. Well, is it? So let's go back. Well, the problem with that is, and this is where I've talked to some of the agents, and I'm like, how do you do your business? And they're like, well, it's kind of a pain in the ass, because I'll send these over, and sometimes it takes 2-3 days to get it back. I'm like, 2 or 3 days? So of course, I use that, but then there's some people, they still look at it and go, well, that's just kind of the way things go over here. I'm like, you do you. All I know
But we
is,
used to do paper.
Yeah.
Carol would have stacks on her desk. And she just sit there one morning.
yeah. All I know is on a Friday morning or afternoon, and you're doing an open house that Sunday, and your seller calls you and goes, hey, let's go ahead and drop this price by 10 grand. Don't you want to be able to drop it on Friday and not have to wait until like the following Wednesday when I get back to you? But hey, you do you. So that is that scenario. Now, the next one Nathan brought up is, so what happens when your buyer falls in love with this house and you call the other agent and say, what's the payout on this? And they say, payout 0. Now what do you do? That's where you can actually, the really only option you have is to write in your amount right here. This is going to be paid by the seller.
You can't do it as a line above.
Right now, I would feel better on 36.
If you add it to the purchase price and then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If I was a buyer and you said, well, I'm gonna ask the seller to pay my commission as a closing cost credit, I'm gonna be like, why am I not getting that
I
credit?
would be.
Right, exactly. I don't know if that's.
I'd be like, I'd been out of my closing cost statement, I wouldn't pay you.
Well, there's kind of a way to get around it, but I'll get that in a minute. Yes.
Wasn't this whole thing supposedly because realtors were driving the price up?
Yes.
It's not going
We
to actually drive the price up.
Just so you know, we're the reason why people can't afford houses now.
Oh, and I heard today that we as realtors get kickbacks from all of our lenders.
Yeah, we do that too.
I wish.
We can't even get the kickback from the home warranty people
Apparently they
anymore.
do that in the car industry, and so they automatically think you're
Sure. Sure.
Do a test and have that. Anyways.
So that's scenario. You call them and there's going to be a 0% payout. What are you going to do? So you're going to, of course, write up this offer, put it in here. You're going to pay 2.7% of purchase price and call it a day and hope the seller goes, hey, yeah, that's great. Yes.
If the buyer's not paying it.
True. Yeah.
Where on there does it say the buyer is paying it?
That would only be your buyer agency agreement. If the buyer, if in fact, which I don't think is ever going to happen, but if in fact the buyer would say, I'll go ahead and pay you. Don't worry about it. You would just put a big fat 0 in there and then
It is happening.
charge them off on their side.
Because in some high,
Yeah. Okay.
I just watched the video.
Okay.
Somebody saying in their market, it's
So the buyer then couldn't finance it because the sale price isn't reflecting the commission.
So if you want it wrapped into the loan, you would have to raise the price and give it back as closing costs, but your buyer would have to up at 3, I would imagine.
But
They
right
have to worry
now,
about
they're
appraisal.
right. If you're tight on appraisal, because the seller's never gonna come down on
Right.
appraisal if they're.
So now here's where it starts to get in the weeds. That sounds all great. You put your 2.7% in there, everything flies through, and we're all hunky dory. What happens when you get a counteroffer back that says line 36 will be 1% and not 2.7? Because now they can counter back our commission because it's part of the contract.
Then I guess that's when you call the other agent.
That's when you tell your buyer. You
Right.
have to tell your buyer.
They have to.
Hey, there was a deficiency. There's a deficiency in our fee. How is this going to work?
Call the listing agent, tell them blacklisting.
Well, I would never say that in a public forum or anything, but
Yeah, this isn't recorded on Facebook.
yeah. No, but that's what's going to happen in a few instances. Is there's going to be either a no payout or a low payout, and then how do you address that when it comes? Yes.
Should be addressing it up front.
Yeah.
So within your consultation, say, your lawyer doesn't work for free, your doctors don't work for free. This is
Well,
how you get paid.
And
Good point.
that's
And
got
traditionally,
yeah.
this is the way it's always been.
that's going to kind of feed me into our next little round here of how we're going to have to actually be a little more professional than we are right now. And
then you're gonna have to deal with remember a few months ago when the agent, she posted on there 2.2% on the commission and I wrote in 2.7, and she called you complaining about me and
Mhm.
how dare she do this? Doesn't she realize that we're part of a lawsuit? Blah.
Well, here now this fixes all that because now our commission is negotiable. So when they put
But I mean, she
2%
didn't know
on
what she was talking about.
she didn't.
She was talking out of her ass.
She didn't. Yeah.
And you had to tell her my agent was completely correct in what she did.
Correct.
So we're gonna have to be dealing with that.
You will. And you know what? That's a very good point. I'll bring up. You might write this in. Put this on here. You might write this in. Let's say they are offering 2% across the board. You're like, no, I want 2.7. So you write in your 0.07 in here. You might get a call from another agent going, what are you doing? We can't do this. Our offer is 2%. You can't, and you have to sit down and think, okay, relax. We can do this. That's what this line is for. But you might run up against that kind of person who says, you can't do this. Yes, we can. And that might end up being either send me an email, include both of our brokers in on it, and we're going to hash this out because we can do that.
Right,
It's a lot of
like,
the
we just have this
conversation before you say anything over anyway. Like, when you just
You could.
call the listing agent and say, hey, this is where my buyers are at, yada, yada,
If
here's
you-
our
if
discount.
If it's not multiple offer negotiations.
Yes, that's true. Oh, wow. I understand.
True.
You know.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
Can my Facebook header picture say all my commissions?
that is going to be an issue. But that's the issue we're going to have to deal with. But you're right, George. I mean, I can foresee that kind of scenario transpiring. Again, it's someone who they interpret this differently than we do. And until we get it ironed out, and only time's going to do that, that's what we're going to put up with. So the end. And then so now it begs the question, then what happens when you put your 0.07% in there and they counter back and say, we're taking that out?
We're gonna go move on to another house.
Well,
That's what I'm gonna do, that's what we should do, right?
that
but honestly, you guys, are you really gonna go move on to another
No.
houses are so much
I-
right now? Is it really
Okay.
right now that they're paying two? We freaking take it.
It depends on,
You know,
it
whatever.
depends on the buyer, like, I have one buyer that would be like, no, you deserve it, we will pay it. And I have another buyer, it's like, we're not paying it.
Or we can't pay it.
Yeah.
And
But-
there will be buyers out there who.
Well-
are gonna know, right, and they're just gonna be like, I'm just
And-
gonna go to the listing agent.
and before I forget, there's also going to be the issues of you have to find out if your buyers are able to pay that, because that might be an issue too. Buyers might go, well, okay, then I'll just pay the difference. Has anyone ever dealt with a buyer that came down to the wire that where, man, they didn't have like an extra dollar to scrape up, so they might not even have that.
I got a closing on Friday, we're not closing because they're $100 short because of the reinspection on the appraisal. You know, and so we have to wait for her to get her paycheck deposited, and has to go back to underwriting, and next week's the holiday season.
The lender can't give her credit for that?
The lender's already given her the credit, and she has to show her 3.5% into the deal.
Yeah, so that's so I just bring that up. So in case this ever comes up, you have to make sure your buyers even understand that.
Oh, no kidding.
Now, you
But I
guys,
have a question what Shelley just, I didn't understand what Shelley just said. We'll just go with the listing agent. If they're gonna pay the listing agents a full commission, why wouldn't they pay the buyer's agent?
Maybe they're not.
no, they wouldn't.
Maybe the listing agent won't charge you 30%.
Right.
Oh, okay,
So,
okay,
so it's,
okay,
yeah, they're not gonna.
Right.
okay.
And that
You already have a buyer's agency signed with them, and they're like, we'll just go with the listing.
Have you ever tried to enforce the buyer's agent?
well, and okay, so let's take it down that road because this is going to happen to us on the listing side also. What happens when you're the listing agent and someone walks in and says, hey, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use you. This goes back to the listing agreement where it has the different amounts. I mean, are you really going to charge anything different? I would look at like, okay, if you're going to come and use me, and this is where we need to hash this out because there's some real world issues that are coming up in this that no one really thinks about. We're going to deal with a lot more unrepresented buyers in a transaction. Now, how does that physically work? How are you going to do that?
When I do the transaction broker agreement, and I've always, since I even had my own company, I've always told people that I charge 6%, but if I sell it myself, I'll reduce it to 4%. And then I show them the
Mhm.
transaction broker agreement that says basically I'm gonna sit on a fence and I'm gonna negotiate. I'm not gonna represent you and I'm not
Bingo.
gonna represent the buyer.
Bingo.
And I don't have any problem
Well,
with it.
because
That's actually on the list.
the real world is, and this is where it's going to get kind of dicey, is because the buyers are going to sit there and go, okay, well, wait a minute, I don't want to pay this money. I'll go right to the listing agent. I'll get a better deal. That's what everyone's thinking.
Yes.
Okay, so you come to me, you get a better deal. I'm the listing agent. Now we write the offer and we start into it. Now you are my customer. The seller is my client. I have a fiduciary to my seller. So I'll ask a question of you that I asked when I was doing that panel with the board. You across the board, everything's normal. There's nothing weird. Offer, you write up an offer for a buyer who comes in. They want the house, $400,000. You write it all up. Everyone signs off on it. Everyone's happy. We all high five and go home. 7 days later, the buyer has not contacted you about a building inspection. What do you do? Think about it for a minute. Think it all the way through. Day 7, day 8, they've not contacted you. What do you do? Do you contact the buyer and go, hey, you've only got 2 days left to do your inspection? If you do, are you breaking your fiduciary to your seller? And if you don't, are you breaking your fiduciary to your seller? And here's why. Because you might think, oh no, buyer signed the contract. I'm looking out for my seller. They passed that day 10. They're screwed. Is it anyone but me ever had a scenario where, like, a week before closing, the buyer's agent calls you and says, oh, we're going to do our inspection tomorrow. And you're like, I'm not doing an inspection tomorrow. You were supposed to do that 3 weeks ago. Oh, if my buyers can't have an inspection, we're not buying the house. And then, of course, we do what everyone does. Oh, you're going to get sued. Sellers are going to sue you. We're going to sue me. We're going to sue everyone. And we're going to come down the wrath of God. And we spend 3 days sending emails back and forth and threatening everyone. And you know what usually happens? They usually cave in and let them have an inspection anyway, because it's so much easier. And now everyone's pissed off about the whole scenario. That's what usually happens. So do you hold firm and go, you know what? If they didn't want an agent, it's their own damn fault. Screw them. And then deal with the repercussions later? And is that really in your seller's best interest? This was a question I posed at the board. Is it in your seller's best interest? You have to look out for what they want. What does your seller want? Your seller wants to sell their house and move on. Does your seller want to get involved in a 2-year legal battle? Do they? No, they don't. Now, they might tell you they do. Oh, well, I'll sue them. Okay. And now you're stuck in a 2-year legal battle. Is that what you want? So here again, I wish I had a concrete answer for you, but this is a scenario when you start dealing with, and this is what buyers are going to be faced with when they come in. And this is why I think it's going to be good for us, because it's going to show the value of buyer agency, because there are going to be buyers out there. There will be some that go, well, sorry, I'm just going to go right to the listing agent, or, because then I won't want to pay anything. And then they're going to get involved in the deal. It's going to blow up on them. And they go, this freaking sucks. And you're like, well, next time you need to hire an agent, or you need to go tell all your friends there is some value in an agent.
That's what I was gonna ask. How do you explain to people your value? Because like, well, I'll just do it myself. I have all the connections.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm doing an inspection, I know a mold guy, I know an electrician, I'll just do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you explain your value?
They can. And by all means, you know what I do? I say, okay, you know what? Let's think of it this way. If I were to sue you for $100,000, do you need an attorney? You don't need an attorney. No, you don't. I can sue you for $100,000. You don't need an attorney. You can show up in court and go, Judge, I think what he's saying is wrong. What's the chances you're going to win that case? If you go to do your taxes, you can do your taxes yourself. And you start getting letters from the IRS, that's all on you. That's why I pay an accountant. So you can do it yourself. But if it blows up, it blows up. There's a lot of things you can do yourself. You can fix your own car. You can. So, yes.
My question with your scenario, right, is if your fiduciary duty in that situation is to your seller, wouldn't it probably save a world of pain if you presented that to your seller right
Yes.
in front?
Yes, it will be. And
this is the situation that we're in.
And
how do you want me to move forward?
in my opinion, technically, you should do it that way. You should go to your seller and go, okay, now since there's not an agent on the other side, your seller, because you're going to already have this conversation when you take your listing with them, and on there it says if a buyer comes in unrepresented, what am I paying? Is it still 6%? And they're going to go, well, why is it still 6%? And here's why. Because I'm going to have to work both sides of this. I'm going to have them yelling at me. I'm going to have you yelling at me. I'm going to try and get this deal together and make everyone happy. And in the meantime, not get us all sued.
Yeah, are you sure you
It's
Well,
like double the work.
Well, it is. Honestly, I would even argue it's more than double the work.
Right, it is.
Because now you're going to get yelled at by both sides. So and each one of them is going to look at you like you're working for the other side. That's all they're going to do. So anyway, and that's how that's going to be all part of a buyer agency presentation, which is going to become a big factor in our businesses moving forward. Which it's going to have to be sit down and let's talk with someone about what it takes. I mean, if anyone's ever been to an accountant, an attorney, or anything, you usually have your first initial meeting is free, and you sit down and they listen to your case. Okay, I'd be happy to help you with this. Sign my retainer and let's go. And that's kind of what we're going to end up doing.
Well, and I think we as agents all need to understand, we are, like you started that listing, what really, I mean, what do you want us to do? What is the, as far as inspections? And then even if we do ask them when they're having, are we saying, hey, when you're going to send them the form and say, I mean, how does it get filled out?
Yeah, and that's another thing. Do you send the inspection notice, a blank one, over to the buyer and go, go ahead and fill this out and send it to me? Do you?
Did, and it came back handwritten.
I know. I mean, do you? Okay.
Really? I think we're gonna see more for sale by owners, people that have followed this,
You know what?
It's surprising, like you said yesterday, that we don't
You know
see
what?
more now.
Yeah, we talked yesterday.